I wonder what it takes to like actually make a game, and maybe we should just, do it. And then we got brainstorming at that time, and then in that brainstorming process, the concept of alchemy and making an alchemical themed board game kind of birthed itself from there.
Alkemia's grand city of Crasis calls upon you. The Circle of Seers prophesies, the one to synthesize the crest of creation shall become the next grand alchemist. Guide one of 6 up-and-coming alchemists in their quest to bring forth the crest by uncovering its long-lost recipe. Journey outside of Crasis to explore the bountiful foraging fields of Alkemia. Scavenge through the foraging fields to collect the reagents necessary to synthesize new and powerful items, leading you ever closer to uncovering the crest's recipe. The crest awaits a worthy alchemist to wield its power. Destiny's recipe has called for you. Will you answer?
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Phat Games podcast. On this episode, Gary and I, as always, have some very special and amazing guests. It is our first time hosting some tabletop game developers, and also our first time having 5 people on at the same time. I would like to welcome the wonderful people from Kinsoul Studio. Let's start with some introductions. Matt and Adam, why don't you guys go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Matt.
I'm Adam.
We are 2 of the 5 of Kinsoul, and we handle a lot of the business, logistics, financials, conventions, project management, you name it. We're all kind of fluid, so we all do a lot of things, but that's what we focus on a lot.
Logistics and shipping stuff is more my game, but I also help out with conventions or any sort of thing he wants to throw my way.
It's true.
Exciting. Eric and Jeff?
Hello, I'm Eric, and
I'm Jeff.
And we are numbers 3 and 4 of Kinsoul Studio. So I mostly work with the mid-stage when we're designing games, as in I do a lot of play testing and I do a lot of work with mechanics, etc.
And I tend to do a lot of the earlier stage stuff. So I'm generally concept design. After we kind of figure out what we want to do, I'm usually figuring out characters and powers, etc. And then I also usually work close with the artist just to make sure that gets done.
All right, Jordan.
Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm number 5, and my position is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I mostly just do development, although I also help out at conventions and do the schmoozing and selling at those things. But yeah, I work on the beginning and middle and end of development of games. Although so far with Kinsoul, I only have the one game, Steepseers, because I'm the newest member of the crew.
Great. So I first met Matt, Jeff, Adam, and Eric. I think that was in 2015, or was it 2016? One of those 2 years.
Yeah.
At the first FlameCon. But instead of talking about how I met you guys, how did you guys all meet one another? How did Kinsoul kind of become its thing?
It's an interesting mix of things.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a long story.
Okay.
There's a lot of long stories. I'll try to sum it up as best as I can. So Jeff and I were friends, like just kind of online AIM friends, hashtag 2000s, right? And we were friends online for the longest time and just were talking about games and whatever. And eventually we ended up meeting, in person like 10 or 12 or plus years ago. I don't even know. And, we've just been great friends the whole time and ever since. Jeff came with Eric because they are a couple. And then I came with Adam because we are a couple. And so the four of us sort of just became an entity, and it sort of grew into what it was. And then do you guys want to talk about how Jordan got added?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jordan cut my hair.
This is true.
Essentially.
Jeff, you should tell your side of it first.
I can't remember all of it, but pretty much I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was, kind of talking about my games and stuff, and they were like, "Oh, you should go talk to this guy Jordan. He cuts hairs. He would totally love to hear about it." And the first time I was told that, I thought, no, I don't want to go in this guy's like barber shop and be pitching my games and whatever. So I didn't do it that first time. But then someone mentioned it again, like later, and I was like, well, I need a haircut, so I'll just go in there. And then you go in there and he's super friendly and ask him what you do, and then gets excited about games, and then we became friends pretty quickly, and then everyone met him after that.
So you literally did a pitch of Steepseers or Alkemia, and he was like, "Count me in."
Well,
Pretty
so
much.
it's funny, like the town where we are living in. They're living in. I'm not there anymore. But Ithaca, it's kind of a small place, so the nerds start to get to know each other, and so it turns out a mutual friend had actually told Jeff to come see me. And I had just reached this sort of epiphany for myself that the only thing stopping me from becoming a game designer was just choosing to make games. And so I was already coming up with all kinds of wild ideas for new games and stuff, but not really sure what direction to take it, how to get there. And then Jeff sat down in the chair and started talking to me about game design. They were right in the middle of the Kickstarter for Alchemia, actually, at that time.
Oh, really?
And it was near the end of the Kickstarter. But I got wrapped up and excited and about the whole process, and they invited me over to play test then Steepseers, and then we just started hanging out as friends. And before I knew it, it was like, "Hey, do you want to come on as a consultant for Steepseers?" And then as time moved on, it turned into, "Want to join the crew?" So
Okay.
I kind of like a buttery amoeba, I melded into the group.
That's official.
All right.
There you go. So in the sense, you were, as a barber, you're one haircut away from your dreams.
There you go. That's it.
I don't know how many people can actually say that in real life. So that's actually an incredible story. So we've had a lot of indie developers, mostly of the video game kind, on the podcast, and a lot of them choose to either work solo, or there's a husband and wife duo, or there is a financial relationship there, and one of them is just contracted out to the other. So it is really incredible that the five of you sort of came together. Maybe the sort of small community fostered that, but
I'd say predominantly over the love of games, which is, I think, a really good place to start with development.
Definitely.
That's
Sure.
awesome. We're going to talk more about that because I have more questions now.
All right,
Let's
cool.
start with the first game, Alchemia, Destiny's Recipe. So I first saw this ad, as I said, FlameCon, and I think I saw it again at FlameCon too. I contributed to Kickstarter. What was the inspiration behind this? How did you guys come up with this?
So for this one, I feel like Alkemia actually predates Kinsoul Studio, and that Alkemia was kind of the glue that formed Kinsoul Studio, so to say. I have a distinct memory of us all sitting around Matt's kitchen table, and we were just we had a long weekend of playing games. And on Sunday, before we were leaving, we were just I wonder what it takes to actually make a game, and maybe we should just, do it. And then we got brainstorming at that time, and then in that brainstorming process, the concept of alchemy and making an alchemical themed board game kind of birthed itself from there.
And then we were like, oh, good God, what have we gotten ourselves into? This is incredible amounts of work.
Pretty much.
That came a bit later, but yes. Yeah, in that story, I distinctly remember the moment where we were like, "Oh yeah, how what could we do? What would happen?" And like we just like fell silent for I don't even know 10, 15 minutes. I mean, it was an extended amount of time, and by the time we were done and we all talked again, within an hour of conversation, we had the basis of Alchemia worked out, and we were like, "Yeah, maybe this is what we should be doing."
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So it's Alchemia is more of a resource-based management game. So do you want to talk a little bit more about the gameplay there, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, it's an item crafting resource management game where you take the role of an alchemist who is trying to prove themselves. They're kind of up and coming, newer alchemists, and they're trying to get experience and prove themselves. And there's sort of a catastrophic-esque event on the horizon, and they're trying to raise themselves up to the position of a grand alchemist so they can like help and kind of help fix everything. So they're given a test to create a legendary item, the Crest of Creation. The only problem is nobody knows how to make it. So throughout the game, you go around collecting resources, crafting items, getting powers, doing all sorts of cool things, bending the rules in different ways, and combos and things like that. And as you create items, it's like research, and you learn how to create this lost item. And you literally piece it together, and then it's the first person to piece together the recipe and complete it is the winner.
That sounds great, and it is a very fun game. I've never played it with you guys before, though. Maybe that will probably need to change at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
Depending on what the kind of experience you want, you could play with me if you want like some power fantasy, because I'm quite bad at Alchemia, even though it's fun to play. But choose one of the others if you want an actual competition.
Noted. Okay. Well, you guys need to come down to the city, or I need to make it up there before that happens.
Yeah,
We'll
absolutely.
figure that out in COVID times.
All right.
So your second game was Steepseers. It is more of a card-based game. Let's talk about that.
A little bit. Eric.
Want to cover that, Eric, since it was your idea child? Or
I can start us off again. So Steepseers is kind of a blend between fortune telling and brewing tea. And this is kind of funny because all of us in the group love both fortune telling and brewing tea. I mean, we were doing this before we were Kinsoul Studio, so it was kind of like a natural fit for a game that all of us would have some sort of knowledge on and would have some sort of input on. So from there, it became, okay, well, how can we blend these concepts together, and what mechanics can we use, and what have we learned from Alchemia, where we can make a tea brewing fortune telling game?
Wait, so you got tarot cards? All of you?
They're tarot card sized.
You actually have to brew
Yeah,
tea?
they're tarot card sized. Yeah, but were you guys into tarot cards before this? I don't think I knew this.
Yeah.
yeah,
All of us in some way.
Oh.
Yeah. He's got a deck. I've got a whole drawer full of them.
Eric likes runes.
Eric does tarot and rune reading, and I was trying to get into palm reading at one point, but the book was big. But yeah, we've all been into it in different ways, and like Eric said, we just sort of naturally fell into it, and they're the two things that we've just always loved, and we're like, let's see if we can challenge ourselves to make a game out of it, and we did.
and it's fun because the deck itself, whether in the game or you can just purchase the deck by itself, is an oracle deck, so you can use it as just that, as a divination tool.
I don't think I knew that. That's cool. So okay, so it's a tea making game.
Yeah.
And it's card game. So so you all like making tea, and you all like telling fortunes. So you're just gonna combine the two to make the game then? So how
Right,
do you
so
win the game?
So that's kind of the thematic glue that holds it together, but mechanically wise, the game is kind of similar to Alchemia, where there is a resource gathering mechanic, but it's a little different in that you use dice to do so. So throughout the game, you'll have 4 different dice, which represent 4 different tea ingredient houses. We have fruit, herbs, flowers, and tea leaves. So you'll be making teas with those combinations of ingredients by kind of rolling dice and collecting ingredients. And the other interesting thing about the game is that once you collect your ingredients, there's also a memory mechanic in that you will put them in a bag and they'll be held there blindly until you're ready to use them, or in game terminology, pour them. And at that point, on the table, there will be a grid of the cards that you're trying to, in game terminology, again, evoke or just collect and gain points. So you'll pour out all of your ingredients and you'll see what you have to be able to make some of those cards. And from there, it's pretty much just having the best combination of cards, having the most points, and using abilities that are on the cards to the best of their synergies to become the winner within 10 rounds.
That sounds great. So both Alkemia and Steepseers have had successful Kickstarter campaigns. Kickstarter is not fun. Let's talk about that.
Well, the first
Or not talk about it.
Let's start off.
Let's skip that question.
Next.
I would love to, but I remember being pinged by a few of you guys actually on Facebook during the Alkemia Kickstarter. It's like, give us more money. And,
Please, everyone we know, give us money now. Thanks. Yeah.
no, I was very happy that both of them were successful, but I know that wasn't easy. So let's talk about that.
Alchemia didn't go through the first time.
I remember.
I had too.
I remember.
Yeah, that was an uphill battle for sure. It's like you're always working against, well, what else is being released on Kickstarter at that time? And is a large, super mega company going to release something on Kickstarter to get funded at that time?
Right.
And so that was, I mean, that's always a battle for everyone, of course, I'm sure.
I think the first time was Scythe.
Is that what it was? I was trying to remember what game came out. I think
Pretty sure it was Scythe. And we were like, oh, crap. This is going to suck.
Isn't that the single most well-funded Kickstarter board game?
I mean, probably.
I think it was.
I mean, it looked cool, so I get it, but
Having handled the pieces, it feels like a game that was successfully kickstarted. I mean,
It was up there. I think Kingdom Death Monster may still hold the crown, but I'm not 100%.
That's what I was going to ask. I figured Kingdom Death might have the most.
yeah.
Fact check us on this.
Fact check. But yeah, I mean, I kind of clearly
follow
remember that it was Scythe, at least the first time. I'm pretty sure about that.
Game of that level, like something that like absorbed the entire board game like Kickstarter community, pretty much funneled all of their efforts into that. And so a lot of different projects were sort of affected by it. And then couple that with the fact that it was our very first project, we're very new, nobody knows us really. It just was sort of destined not to work out that first time. But we recognized that, you know, about
We got to
halfway
learn
in.
from it and do different things.
Yeah, we did all the prep, you know, we did everything we should have done, and we learned a lot in that process. So when it came to making the second one, the second Kickstarter for Alkemia, we took those lessons, refined them, made it all better, you know, improved the page, improved the goal, improved the rewards, did a ton of promotion, ton of outreach, went to a lot more conventions. That's when we really started stepping up our convention game.
Pestered more and more friends and family.
So let's talk about the outreach and the conventions. What did you do there?
So we did attend more, like I said, and we decided that was going to be a really big focus for us, because that moment where you're talking to somebody about a board game, that especially if it's like your own idea, or you know, or a picture when you go to a convention and you're talking to a developer of any kind and you see that excitement, you see that passion, it's infectious, you know, it really like catches on, and people get excited, people love that personal connection, you know, and we had been going to conventions on our own just as guests for a long time. So like, I kind of recognized that. I was like, guys, I think we can use this power to like help encourage people to like, you know, like us and like our games. And it ended up working.
So it's not like you don't have like paralyzing anxiety when you go in those situations where it's like, well, that's great. Just sort of, I get extremely anxious at conventions. It's very hard for me to promote myself. It's a problem, but
Understandable. I think a lot of people really have that problem, and in other circles I do too. But for some reason, at like a game convention, I just like wake up.
And that's, I mean, well, that's the mega benefit of being in such a big group, because we can take that moment, like, to step away from the table and, you know, gather our thoughts and things like that. And if we
take a break if it's too much.
Exactly, take it on as a team, because I hear you on like feeling anxious and you know, right before it starts and people start coming in, it gets like all of a sudden I forgot every single thing I'm supposed to say, and I just am babbling and feel like I didn't represent the game well. But then, you know, it moves on and feel comfortable, and it becomes so like a lot of fun. So I can't wait till we start getting back into these.
Yeah, me too. I regret that I wasn't at Play NYC. So aside from the conventions, what kind of like social media outreach did you guys do?
Mostly reaching out to friends and family. That's one of the things looking back on the 2 Kickstarters that I'm always thinking about is, if we were to do a third one, what is something that we could definitely improve on? And getting the Kickstarter ready is kind of like running a marathon, and we tired ourselves out pretty quickly because we didn't actually have any kind of professional Kickstarter help. We did everything ourselves, and just try to use like all of our skills to kind of patchwork the Kickstarter campaign together. If we had professional help, that might have lessened our burden a little bit. And also having more funds for like paid marketing, I think, would be something that we would really want to improve upon next time. Because by the time Kickstarter started, we were really just kind of tapped out at that point. And we're like, well, I mean, we're just going to have to, you know, do the best that we can. And luckily, the second run of Alkemia and the first run of Steepseers kind of came in clutch at the end. So that was a nail-biting moment.
Oh my God, the last day of both of those.
Oh my God.
Yeah, for Steepseers, that one did go through in the first try, and I have far fewer memories of you guys bugging me on that one. So was that one
just
easier?
under the wire though?
Yeah,
it was under the wire, but a lot of Kickstarters are. So was that experience a lot better, or?
I think it was less pressure.
I think overall it went a lot smoother.
You guys maybe it was
the prep was smoother. Like we knew what we were doing better this time. We had examples of kind of how we did things with Alkemia, you know, so it was a nice stepping to the next one and like kind of taking those lessons. And we really improved it. We did it a lot faster. Alkemia took from start to finish 3 years, I think, to make and like get it produced and come out.
5.
Like, release it. And then
I think it was 5 years, man.
No, it was 3, but
like or 4 or something, but whatever.
I guess technically it was conceived in 2012, but Kinsoul started in 2014, and then it came out in 2017. So I always kind of did it with Kinsoul, but you're right, it actually was longer that we were working. But yeah, and then Steepseers we turned around in like a year.
Yeah, that seemed a lot faster, but I feel like from a production standpoint, it was maybe a simpler game.
Yes,
definitely simpler in some ways. We had a few new challenges with the manufacturing aspect, and we had to like switch manufacturers, so that was a whole new thing. And as Eric said,
it was to the game's benefit. Let me say,
yes,
okay, it was definitely to the game's benefit.
Absolutely true. And the other thing was the dice. We didn't have like custom dice in the first game, and then in the second one we did, and they really were like central to the game because like the look and the feel of them, it's something you're interacting with all the time. It was so important. So it was just kind of new for us to like, how do we order custom dice? And oh my God, they cost what? And you know, there were a lot of nice surprises like that along the way.
I can believe it, but sticking on the Kickstarter side of things, is it harder now, would you say, than has it gotten harder? I have a feeling that it kind of has for tabletop games.
I know
it's kind of harder for video games.
I would say, because I feel like the culture of Kickstarter changed as we were making Alkemia.
Yeah.
Like when we started, the culture was different. By the time we finished it, it had changed.
In what way?
Just that it was more smaller companies on there. And then by the time we finished, it kind of like moved to, oh, Square Enix has a game on there. What?
Wow.
You know, kind of thing. So
then you're not.
yeah.
And
I always thought the point of Kickstarter was to help kind of smaller
Exactly.
All the productions, right?
There is no territory where smaller productions exist that large productions don't try to butt in on and ruin eventually.
Yeah.
It's like how do we
Kickstarter
get
is
free
not
money
a-
from people kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's a really dangerous idea to consider Kickstarter as a long-term solution. I mean, it's rapidly leaving everybody's grasp, and we need to accept that sooner rather than later. Sorry, that's a bit of a personal aside, but
Well, that's actually a good thing to bring up, because do you think that some other platform will pick up the torch and kind of fill that void?
as
There's an opportunity there,
successfully,
right?
there is opportunity there. It might also be one of those, like, you can't capture lightning in a bottle twice. You can't even capture lightning once. The era might change, right? The whole attitude around games is changing. It's been changing for the last 10 years. And I mean, not to, okay, this is this tabletop world, Asmodee, right? Buying up every single property that exists. I mean, we have our own unstoppable EA version, juggernaut. And I don't know, a platform like Kickstarter may very well be largely inaccessible in reality in the next few years, and there might not be something to replace it. We might be living out the last fun days where people of our size can actually fund something on something like that.
Well, that thought is kind of depressing. So
I know.
hope that that's not the case.
Me too. Me too.
So I'm gonna change. I'm gonna pivot here, and you guys have been working together for almost 10 years now, and 5 now with Jordan, but it wasn't always at 5. But even an indie team working together, 2 people, that's, as I said earlier, that's difficult. What kind of challenges have you guys had going through this process for 2 games together?
I personally think that it's been relatively smooth besides the normal things you deal with. I would say that obviously some challenges are you don't get the full say in what goes in your game. If you're making it yourself, you're like, I want this in it, I want this in it, I don't want this in it. You can't do that with a bigger team. But I don't want to get into upsides, but I think a good upside quickly is just that you get people to call you out on some of your ideas, or when we've been hanging too long on a game and we just need to sort of wrap it up and move on, that kind of thing. But yeah, I would say probably the biggest challenge that I've experienced is just someone really wanted this mechanic in a game, and maybe they came up with it, and you have to have that talk of like, okay, but it's not working. Let's move on and do something else. That's really challenging when you're friends and you don't want to like hurt people's feelings, and
So no one was like, fuck you, I hate you.
Probably at some point, maybe off the phone. But
We didn't tell you about the 6th member of our
Oh.
group.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about the
No,
6.
never mind.
No, we don't talk now.
no.
Oh, okay. He's the one that's no longer with us, I assume.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Yeah, and otherwise, just kind of scheduling things and coordination is harder with a bigger team, right? Because we'll have a convention coming up, and I'll be like, oh, who wants to go to this one? And everyone does, everyone doesn't. There's some combinations, schedules get all messy, and so it makes it a little harder to plan for things necessarily, because everybody wants to be involved in some way, and things become a little last minute because of that. So some coordinating is definitely harder with a bigger team, but we've grown into it. I think our systems for all that kind of stuff are growing. So
are you guys familiar with Gumbo?
I make great gumbo.
I mean,
Yeah, I've eaten gumbo.
The game development cooperative in New York City. I'm a part of it. Phat Games is a part of it.
Oh,
So I've asked the same question to a lot of them, and it's you guys are way nicer, but it could be because you don't live in New York City. They're all great people, by the way, but it's like, yeah, sometimes we fight a lot, but we figure it out. It's like you guys are just very polite about the whole thing. So that's very refreshing. Maybe it's a difference in the tabletop versus the video game world.
I mean, there's definitely times of stress, but we figure it out and move on.
Well, Matt's actually worked on mobile game development within a group and virtually, so
Right.
that's a whole different challenge.
That's
I
a
imagine.
whole other thing.
Yeah.
There was actually, I think I had more drama in my last class and team than I've ever had with Kinsoul over all the years. It's like, really? Oh, and she was from New York.
Oh. Maybe it's because being people from New York City are just assholes.
Yeah, us upstaters are just a little nicer, I guess.
You're close to the Canadian border, it bleeds over, the politeness, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
What did you want to say, Eric?
I was going to say it's also important to note that all of us, for the most part, have full-time jobs in addition to working on games. So I think that's one of those things that just helps us all understand that, we all have like limited time to do board game design in our spare time, as small as it may be.
So actually, that's a great thing to bring up. How have you guys managed the time? Do you have like a schedule or?
It's sort of, we play it kind of loose at first, and then once we've settled on like the next game, and actually we just kind of started doing this with our third game now. We've really kind of.
Ooh, you brought up the third game. Okay.
We'll talk about it. But like once we're kind of like, okay, this is the game. Here is the concept. Here's some assets. Let's start putting something together. Once we kind of get to that point, we start laying out kind of a timeline and a schedule of like, when do we want the game to be released? If we're going to do Kickstarter, when do we need to like, block off the time for that and how much prep time? So we kind of like fill it backwards from there and kind of like figure out, what our schedule looks like. So we'll put something together and kind of define it all out and, figure it out. My job is I'm a software engineer and a project manager for what I do at my company. And so I kind of take a lot of what I've learned from that and I use it here in terms of like tasking and building schedules and just trying to organize everybody and keep things flowing, in some
I
measure.
can relate to that.
Oh yeah, you can, can't you?
Okay, so producing a tabletop game the challenges of producing that are way different. I thought that maybe they actually would be harder, but I just want to say different than maybe producing a digital game. Let's talk about that process. Like, how do you find vendors and all that stuff to manufacture this and do what you need to get done?
Begging them.
Begging them.
Luckily, manufacturers are quite eager to
take your money.
Work with us and take our money. Yes.
Yeah, we're swatting them away most of the time.
Interesting. Well, what is the process? Like I've never done this before. I'm curious.
Gosh, well, I guess at what point in the process do you want to start?
We can starts with the
we can talk early game, we can talk mid game, we can talk production,
card sleeves, printed.
Yep, no notebook paper and card sleeves to
when a dice tower and a set of cards really love each other.
All right, so basically you're saying you have different vendors for different aspects of the game, but you still need to sort of bring that all together and put it all together in a nice happy box to ship it out to customers. So
in some ways it's like
a coordination nightmare.
In some ways it's just as simple as like just purchasing a bunch of small objects, right? I mean, right now you could go online and you could order a t-shirt with a face on it, and you wouldn't think it's particularly complicated to get a t-shirt with a face on it. The complication is much more so in how to do 20,000 of them and producing all the different components from different places, that sort of thing. Of course, Matt and Adam have much more experience with this actual portion of it.
I was gonna say we have, when you get to the like I'm done mode, then you send it to, do we name names here? I don't know.
We used, oh gosh, can't even remember. We used Wingo for our producer for Alkemia, and we used Long Pack Games for Steepseers.
But for actual like playtest.
Oh, but for prototyping, Game Crafter, we use them a lot.
Yeah. We actually visited that.
Did we?
Wasn't that the one we visited in Florida?
No, that's IGA.
IGA.
But GameCrafter is a service that is like a manufacturer, in that you can make custom parts, and upload your art and things like that, and they'll make everything for you. But they do their orders in small batches.
So that's for prototyping specifically.
Exactly.
That's their model then.
It's really nice, clean finish kind of thing to bring to the conventions and drum up support to get your Kickstarter funded.
Yep, that's exactly what we've done.
Yeah.
Usually we'll make something from GameCrafter and take it to several conventions, but most importantly, the one we like most lately is Metatopia. That one is perfect for playtesting and for alphas and betas. There's no pressure of sales. There's no pressure of completeness. Everyone is just there to test new ideas and talk about them.
Metatopia,
New
Jersey.
It's in New Jersey.
Yeah.
In like November. But yeah, and actually we're planning on going with our third game this year.
That's exciting. So what's like the cost of some of that then? I'm a complete noob here. I know nothing about tabletop development.
It depends on the components, really. The number of cards, or the number of things, the materials they're made out of. Are they custom? Are they standard? Like getting a standard size D6 die with pips on them is super cheap. But then if you want to get a twice the size die that's colored and custom cut with engravings, that's like 6 times the price is what it would normally have been. So it really varies depending on what you want in your game.
Well, and a huge factor now that I actually can't even fathom when we're going to have to deal with this is the shipping costs, because we have now, things are made in China typically. And so that's where our games have come from. So we've got Longpack and Wingo, and they were our manufacturers. And, but then you have to get it on the boat and get it over here. So you have the wait time is typically 30 to 50 days in the ocean, and it used to cost I don't know, few $1,000s.
Just a couple thousand. We didn't really spend too much on the actual shipping to us, which was nice. It was a good surprise.
It's been like 200 to 300% increase in shipping costs.
So is that because of COVID, or is that lead back to some of the tariffs that Trump did, or is it a combination of both?
That's a combination. You've got the actual. The tariffs are huge. That was when we got Steepseers in. I was like checking the website constantly, like, are we gonna get this extra 25% or 10% or whatever it might be on the value of the items?
We dodged that bullet by like a month.
Yeah,
two. We
Since
almost got the tariff.
Yeah, I don't know the current status or situation. Like, are people being charged this extra 25% or extra 10 or 15%? Because that's wild. But the actual freight cost, the cost to get it from port to port and then get it from a freight truck to your final location, which in our case was a storage facility, it's gone up dramatically. And it is because of COVID. There was that one spot in the recent history where the Suez Canal got backed up with prices shot. I bring in product from China in my regular day-to-day job, so like that's why I kind of know a little bit more about that. But it's created like the prices will go up and up. A crisis happens, it goes up and up. It's not going to come down. That's what I'm feeling so far. It might eventually, but when I think about getting into our next one, shipping costs to get it here is going to be a huge factor. You're going to have to remember, I don't need $20,000. I need $27,000, $28,000. Who knows? But it's a scary time for sure.
Wow. So have you done any second runs on Alkemia or Steepseers since you first?
No. We did ditch the storage facility, luckily, and we were able to store it in other means because we did sell, a number of them. But yeah, we still have plenty of games, people.
Ready to be
Great. So let's sell you guys some games.
KinsoulStudio.com, check it out.
They're a great game. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Phat Games podcast. If you'd like to support us in our content creation, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so that you get notifications of our new videos. Now we're going to play a song from the Alkemia soundtrack.